Great. Greg Plageman, executive producer.
Thank you.
So what can fans expect from the season?
I think if you look back on season one, you'd say, well, we told a story about what happened to the character of Reese in the past, and how did he get where he is. We learned a lot about Jessica and his backstory and what happened with him in the military and how he fell off the grid. And I think we've kind of told the story between what happened with Reese and Jessica, and we know a lot more about him than we did before, and we understand him in that aspect. But Harold Finch is a very interesting character who was also falling off the grid for his own reasons. And towards the end of the season, obviously, we found out about the fiance that he had named Grace, who he chose to leave behind. And I think the story we haven't heard is what happened to Harold Finch, and at what point did he have to make that decision, and how did he do it, and also what happened with his partner Nathan Ingram, and how did Finch get his loan? So, all things that we want to explore this year, but first we have the issue of the fact that he's been abducted.
What is the production schedule like for a show like this? I mean, is it something that you have some time to work on stories, or is it pretty crazy? You got to really push
It's
through.
murder. It's we go to New York, we go to the set, and the PAs come and they go, yeah, we might lose a guy from time to time because the show is grueling. But the word in New York, and there are a lot of shows shooting there for tax break reasons, but is that Person of Interest is not a show, it is a sport. And that's definitely true. I mean, rain, sleet, or snow, we're out in the streets of New York, and we love to shoot at night, which is really hard on our crew, and they're fantastic. But it's kind of what we need in order to get the show to look the way we want it to look. I think for that reason, I think it feels a little more cinematic than a lot of shows on television, and we don't really want to compromise that. There's an action component that's much bigger than a lot of television shows, but none of this, of course, we want to come at the expense of performances and just telling a good story.
There's a very big technological aspect to the series. A very big technological aspect to the series. Now, is that going to evolve in future seasons, or are you going to keep it pretty close to what exists in real life?
Oh, I think it's constantly evolving, and I think even if you go back and look at the first couple episodes of season one and how much we've sort of as it's gone along in terms of the machine POV that you see on the show, and the amount of GAC, or what we call it, and the squares, and the amount of information that's being translated to the audience. I mean, that's almost like another part of the show that, like, some people are following, some people aren't, and beginning to understand that this is a machine that can learn. And we think that we're in some really interesting times here. And the idea that, have they tried to build a machine? Yes, they have. The question you should ask yourself is, have they? And if so, how is it constantly evolving? I mean, it's kind of amazing, even when the smartphone came along, what it did initially, and then even what it does in every generation after, and then how immediately we adopt that technology and it becomes a given. And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen with our show. Is whether it's social networking or whether it's smartphones or surveillance and how it's all integrated. You have to imagine that the machine that Harold Finch has created is taking all of this in, and it's very interesting times.
It actually is
The
quite
last
scary,
question.
Whenever I watch it and I think about that, it's very kind of scary to even think of having a machine like that. Like, what if it runs amok?
Yeah, I wonder. London had the Ring of Steel before New York. Bloomberg's New York brought out as many cameras as it did, and I think the British were immediately much more comfortable with it, and I think have been very successful in using that level of surveillance to avert another terrorist attack. So I think that becomes the question for people: is how comfortable are you with trading your privacy for security, and is it a bad thing? And I think that most people would answer, say, if I'm not doing something wrong, then what do I care? But it's not just surveillance; it's cameras. It's what's being transmitted from your phone, and who's using that information. And it's an interesting question. And we don't want to be didactic about it and say, moralize this Orwellian nightmare that we've entered into. No, it's a much more complex question, and we're in a very interesting area in terms of processing power of machines and how they can take that information and use it. So, fun question.
Thank you.